there's a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that I don't want you to share.
Yeah. Okay. Well, don't say
There's
anything you don't want
bits,
to share.
yeah. And I'm very happy to speak very openly with you, but there's a lot of pieces for strategic psychological reasons
Yeah.
that I don't speak about publicly. And there's also a lot of pieces for the sake of my family and my
Yeah.
mum, especially,
Yeah. Well,
that I
I'm
don't
not.
speak about.
I have. I mean, to be honest, I'm quite bold. I completely put my faith in God. So,
Right.
and I believe there's a huge cost of not speaking clearly about this.
Yeah, so do
And
I.
also
But
psychologically, because
yeah.
I'm quite a pragmatic psychologist. My I've got a pragmatic view on psychology, which is cut from some slightly interesting experience. I bastardized
Are
an
you a
MSc.
psychologist? I thought you were an MBA. I mean, I had a very quick
Yeah,
look
no,
at what
no,
you
I'm
do.
not. Well, I'll tell you what it is. Okay,
I'm,
I'll tell
mm,
you what I mean, right? Um, so the answer is no, but let me just explain. Um,
that's all right.
I,
I'm very
I,
anti-psychologist.
I am very, yeah, very. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
why I think it. I'll just tell you why I think it's important. Um,
Mm,
I uh, I did some work with a guy called John Webster, who was one of the founders of Executive Coaching Psychology, who's one of the few psychologists who's actually got a credible business background, and he
mm,
very, very interesting person. And I spent he pioneered a program, MSc level program, and I spent 2 years with him,
mm,
bastardizing this program, and I put some of this stuff into practice because
mm.
I'm a sit or I'm sort of do a lot of things, but senior exec going back quite a long time. I took this MSc program and I used it
MSc in what?
in executive coaching psychology.
Right.
Um,
An MSc in executive coaching. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's from Chester University, quite high level stuff, a whole raft of sort of, and I basically went through all of it, cut out all the crap, and I put this in. I developed a 3-day program, and I trained my team because the question for me was, if I've got a team of people, how can we make ourselves more productive, right? And I noticed I applied some of the other stuff I learned from his program, and it had dramatically successful results just about the way you engage with people. So I developed this 3-day program to develop my team, to turbocharge them. How can you make individuals more um, make people more productive? And we created a really extraordinary team of people who care.
Would you mind, Tom, just because I don't know any of your background, can you just give me background? Because I saw you had a lot of engineering in there, which is
Yeah, yeah.
kind of what
So
jumped
I
out
am
to
an
me, because
engineer by
that's a
background.
huge piece. So that's your undergrad, you did engineering,
Yeah,
yeah?
I'm an engineer by background. So
Yeah.
engineer, the unique thing about engineers is they don't tolerate bullshit very well.
Oh, I know. There's so many fantastic engineers in this space. It's a huge missing link because your
I know.
system thinkers. I'm an engineer. I'm ex-comp sci, right?
Oh, that's
Psych's only
interesting.
second to me.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
really
So I
matters
get
because engineers are rigorous in their thinking, and in order to
yes,
fix or do something difficult, you've got to get to the truth. You can't
yes,
take any shortcuts. And in fact, I've run aerospace engineering um, departments designing aircraft. And
yeah,
I noticed if you bend these people out of shape, if you don't listen to them, if you don't treat them with respect, the
yeah,
risks are just exponential. I mean, it's just
yeah,
off the planet, you know.
yeah.
So, and you're so reliant on somebody sticking their hand up and saying, "Hold on a minute, something wrong with this." And I
Mm,
looked at, there were two things that occurred to me in aerospace. One was the Branson Galaxy flight thing that blew up, and that was a fundamental
mm,
psychology problem because
yeah,
the engineers would have known that fuel was volatile and it's going to explode. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, and no one spoke
yeah.
up. That
No
bloody
one
thing,
spoke up. Like this sub that just went down, right? Just blew up. No one spoke up. It's the same
exactly.
thing.
It's exactly the same thing. And the other
Yeah.
example is the 747 Max situation. That's exactly the same thing.
Mm,
So when I look at situations, I know there's lots of examples of company turnaround. I'm a company turnaround expert. So um,
yeah.
and I study the psychology because I understand how did the business get to where it got to, right?
Mm,
What was the
mm,
thinking? What was the psychology? Because thinking
mm.
to me is psychology.
It
What's in
is. It's
what's in
everything.
your head?
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
actually what drives us. It's not logical.
Totally,
Yeah,
totally. Understanding it is the answer,
yeah.
right?
So
As an engineering solution. I see this as an engineering problem, but you have to understand the psychology.
yes,
It's just an objective piece, right?
totally.
Like,
So
yeah.
absolutely. So and also I'm a Christian. I care. I've noticed that, yes, I agree. It is people of our age that care about this stuff. And I've noticed as well, frankly, the only people with the strength to cope with this are Christians.
I'm
Because,
not though.
well,
I'm
that's
not, Tom.
interesting.
I have this is one of the ones I have a problem with.
Okay, that's
Because
fine. I'm not trying to
yeah.
persuade you either way. I'm just
No,
sharing
no,
my,
no. But I'd like to engineer this. I'd like to kind of reverse
well,
engineer
in
that
its
blue
simplest,
piece.
but in
Big
its
one.
simplest form, okay.
Yeah.
From my company turnaround experience, okay, there's lots of things tragically that you, if you're on one, if your life was falling apart in a really bad way, and the
Yeah.
awful thing about a turnaround, it's off the planet in terms of difficulty. And I've led 200 company turnarounds, okay. And what you find is there are some things you can fix, Ros, and there are some things you can't, okay.
Yeah.
And if you burden yourself with the notion that you can fix all that stuff, you simply can't. And you either go one of two ways that I've noticed. Either you start lying or kidding yourself, right? Which is where the winning thinking program that I run and a lot of my book comes from, around
Yeah.
corruption of dialogue and such stuff. People try to normalize things or create
I
generalizations.
heard that was the bit, like I listened very quickly because I get a
Okay.
lot of people writing and wanting to chat, and I just thought, I was out shopping and I thought I'm just going to listen. I was ready to write you off, to be honest, because you're an
Yeah.
MBA and I'm ex-MBA and don't have a lot of time for it. But
MBAs are a
then I
waste of
heard
time, I
you,
agree. Yeah.
but I heard you,
I don't have an
the
MBA. I teach an MBA programs, weirdly enough, which is even
bit I
worse.
heard you saying was about humility
Yeah.
and about going from the self to the other, and love being ultimately the
That's
you know,
biblical. That is
and
100% biblical.
but it doesn't have to be. It
It
doesn't have to
does.
be, Tom.
Well,
And that's
anyway,
the
we
bit I
can.
would love to talk to you about, because I
I'm
get
just.
really
Yeah.
fed up with
Okay.
people
Yeah.
saying because you're not Christian, somehow you can't be
I
pure of
didn't say that.
intent. I know
Rose, I
you
didn't say
didn't
that.
say it, but
I
there's a
know.
lot of people in the
Okay.
truth community
Okay.
who have become as almost what's the word, fanatical about the purity of Christianity. But it was that sent me away from Christianity, because I grew
I
up in a
know.
very
It
Christian
put me off as
school and
well.
all that, and
No,
I
no.
couldn't handle it. It was really
I've
unkind and
well,
unforgiving.
I've learnt. I mean, I've learnt. I mean, it's an interesting topic, but I've learnt through hard experience. Most of my life, I've created absolute pandemonium. Okay,
Me too.
do all the things that I shouldn't do as a young man, to
Same.
excess.
We
Um,
probably went to the same parties. We're the same age, right?
yeah.
Were you out? You were out. We were the acid generation. We were out taking pills and all of that, right? It was huge.
Well, I
It was
wasn't
a.
into all that crap, but
Oh,
I've never taken drugs in my life. I never will
okay.
ever. I'm extraordinarily anti-drugs, but pretty
Mm,
much everything else, women, um, you name alcohol, cigarettes. I've always played hard, worked hard.
mm,
I've cycled up,
same.
I've cycled up the Alps, many, many
Yeah.
times. So, um,
Cool.
so, but the point I was making really, and I'm not going to burden you with my faith, okay? But I'm going to talk about I can talk about the practical side. So when I talk on MBA programs, okay, I talk about grace and love, okay,
Mm,
which are two, and you've just shared something, and I'm not, but I think what's so important is that the alternative to not having something bigger than yourself is yourself, right?
mm,
And
mm.
that, if you're not careful, is very close to narcissism, right?
Yeah.
If you are let's just say, okay, if you have made up your own set of beliefs and I've made up my own set of beliefs, and we
Mm,
don't have anything that grounds us whatsoever, then
mm,
I've noticed that frankly there's very little chance of us agreeing. And there are things which are intentionally destructive currently, which um, you can only really I check my thinking. It's one of the checks on my thinking, right? So if you take the whole pride thing and the
as in
corruption,
the
equity,
gay
diversity,
pride thing,
inclusion,
do you
yeah,
mean?
equity,
Yeah.
diversity, inclusion, all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That is, in my analysis, simple analysis, the absolute direct opposition to Christianity, because Jesus said, it comes back to what it's saying about humility. Pride is the
Mm,
opposite of humility.
mm.
And pride is Jesus said pride is an abomination. And
Yeah.
the reason for that
I
is
agree.
and so anyway, I won't burden you, but So
No,
all I'm
do,
saying,
do. This is a really important piece.
yeah,
Do. Or can I just say one thing and then you wax lyrical? The thing is, it's just constant. Um, like I said, for me, the only reason I turned against a very, very strong religious upbringing was because it was so intolerant. It was burn in hell, right?
yeah,
Do this or burn in hell. And I was like, but what about the people? What about the people here? And I was like, it's just not kind. And so
yeah,
what you've sort of said we've got Christianity, and then almost as though it's this Boolean thing, right? And then you've got pride, and it's like, no, I don't think I have all the answers. I don't think I know anything. Do you know what I believe in? I believe in love. I believe that
yeah,
humans are loving, and ultimately that
yeah,
love is what rules
totally.
it. But I just don't have a Jesus or a
No,
God. That's all. I
I know,
don't
but
know.
the
I'm not saying they don't
the
exist.
difficulty is with human. I definitely agree with that. So we are love machines. I'll
Yeah,
just bring it back. So for a bloke, there's lots of things you can love, right?
yeah,
Which I've just described, which are very bad for you, right?
yeah,
And so the child, in its simplest form, the first commandment, right, is to love God as a root, and then to love
yeah.
other people from that perspective. Otherwise, the alternatives of loving money, loving women, loving alcohol, loving
Totally.
cigarettes, that
Yeah.
whole and everything else that's been added to that list most recently, um, isn't good.
Is
I've
that the first
noticed.
commandment? Is the first commandment? Like, I don't remember the order. Is it love God and then
Yeah,
I can't
that is
remember the
the
order.
first commandment, and Jesus said that from nothing else really matters, right? So if your position, right, is one of love, wherever it
Yeah,
comes from, Ros, and
yeah,
I define love as being able, well, the experience I had of when I had my first child,
yes, yeah,
you know,
right,
absolutely mind-blowing love,
yeah,
and again, a child is a gift from God, and you experience
yes,
God in these situations. So in my practical experience, so but that feeling is
mm,
that absolutely feeling of wanting to do absolutely everything for that individual,
yeah,
and that's the way I turn companies
yeah,
around. Okay, so if you're in a crisis and I'm putting you first, right,
mm,
that's a totally unique situation, and you're not going to
it
argue
is,
with me because my
yeah,
heart's with you. I might not get it
yeah,
right. I'm not suggesting I get everything right, but if my heart's with
mm,
you, and I have to be very, very careful. It's a huge responsibility. So I've been really fortunate to test my thinking, not in some sort of wishy-washy, psychologically bullshitty um, type world, which is actually very unhealthy. I think the psychologists, in its simplest form, I think, put things into boxes. So you are one of
oh,
these things, and you will
yep,
never get, which is such an insult to the human being, which is
it's
such a
horrible,
beautiful. We're so beautifully imperfect,
yeah,
as human
yeah,
beings, aren't we? And so
yeah.
for me
Psychologists look at the brain; they don't look at the
to say
heart.
to you, you are a conspiratory 54-year-old woman who lives in a, I mean, just all this stuff.
Yeah,
The minute you
yeah,
put something in a box, you can never get out. So I'm very careful about what I say. I'm not from the perspective of necessarily being nice to people, although I don't like to
mm,
put people in a position they can't cope with. But
mm,
sometimes I get that wrong, and it's quite difficult to
mm.
get that right. But it's
Because you're
about
human,
just
right?
human, yeah. It's about
It's just
respecting
human.
that humanity. Um,
Yeah.
and so, anyway, so that's a sort of potted history. So I mean, I'm a company turnaround expert mainly. Um,
How did you stay there? I'm interested, Tom, because I worked in business for years. Like I did a business degree. I went to Brunel. I studied in London. I was
did you?
working for all the countries in
Okay.
the West, companies in the West End. I was at Accenture, and it was Accenture that was the death knell
Oh,
for
total.
me,
I mean,
right?
eccentric.
Was seeing
I know.
these right partners screaming at each other like toddlers,
I know.
all about uh, companies. And you're the same age as me. You remember e-fulfillment. You remember all of the kind of
Oh, awful. Yeah. I know.
online
I had some
shopping coming on, and
terrible
right,
experiences at Accenture.
and
Yeah.
it was just you know to me, and that's why I'm really interested with what you have to say, because you have the engineering. Most of the engineers I know in this space have a real kind of, they're very pure of heart.
Yeah.
I love it, right? That
Yeah.
they kind of
Yeah.
see the system, they're system thinkers, and they have that real social conscience. They're pure of heart, but most of them stay away from big business. And so, for
Yeah.
me, the all that big business, it's so driven by money, which
Yeah.
is kind of anathema the way I think. So how you, because ultimately that's the sort of part of the world to me that needs to go,
Yeah. I
right?
agree. Yeah.
So
So, I mean,
yeah,
I've, well, I've dug myself a bit of a hole, to be honest, because in a company turnaround situation, you have to have strength to see something through, and part of that can make you very unpopular, right?
Absolutely, of
If
course.
if it's the right thing to do, because,
Yeah,
and I think this is part of the problem at the moment, that there's no easy answers. Most governments are bust, corrupt. There's no easy answers to anything, and anybody that tries to suggest there aren't easy answers, they're going to just print
yeah,
more money and make it worse.
yeah.
So when I arrive in an organization, my starting point is to give people grace and love, right? Because unless you give people grace, that
Totally.
you get overwhelmed with the anger of the past, okay?
Yes.
And if you unless you give them love, which is putting them first, you can't fix the future. So,
It's safety, right? It's all about safety. They have
well,
to feel
safety is
safe
a
and
dodgy word.
vulnerable enough
Safety is a
to
slightly
look
dodgy.
at
You
what
have to
they've
be careful
done.
with safety. Depends what you mean by
Mm.
safety.
I
I
mean psychological safety, that
I
they
think
need
that's.
to feel
I don't think.
vulnerable.
Well,
So in a business reformation situation, right? The normal kind of C-level board staff, it's the same as the doctors, the lawyers, their entire self-concept is around being correct. So to go in and say, you actually need to rethink this, something you did wasn't right, they really struggle with that. And so
yeah.
you have to provide psychological safety. And what you said about giving them grace and love, it's giving them.
Yeah, but safety. I mean, if you read part of my book, again, I check my thinking from the Bible. Okay, safety, searching out safety is a very big problem. It feels evil. Do you
Depends
know
what you
why?
have.
Do you know why? Why the Bible thinks that is? It's theologians. One of the chapters of my book. This is a reason why I don't rely on my own intelligence, right? Because you read stuff in the Bible, you think that just doesn't make any bloody sense, and you think, ah, shit, it does. Because if you just think about this, right? In England, there are white girls being raped by Muslims. Okay. Now,
Yeah,
if you wanted to be safe in that situation and incorporate a notion of safety, you would
yeah.
avoid talking about that completely.
Mm, mm.
But I'm of the view I'm not
I
going to
wouldn't. Not what
I'm
I
of the
mean.
view that situation, right, being the father of two girls, okay,
Yes.
trust me, you wouldn't want to be anywhere
I
near.
know. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I will absolutely. There's an element of respect and grace and love, right? But that doesn't mean that the whatever's happened has gone away. Okay, and
No,
it still needs to be fixed. Repentance
it
is
does.
critical. So, um,
Yes.
so action has to be changed. So, this notion of safety is an absolute killer. In fact, safety is the. I'm sure you don't mean that in the
I
way
think we're
I'm
talking
thinking.
about different things. Yeah,
No, no,
absolutely. I'm talking
but
about
this is an
psychological
example of
safety.
dialogue. I did a talk to the local Chamber of Commerce recently, and
Mm.
the head of the council, I asked, well, what? I can't remember, but her answer was safety. Right.
Where are you? Where are you, Tom?
I live in Surrey in the UK.
Do you?
Yeah.
Ah, lovely. I did law at Kingston Uni.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's not
after.
far away. Yeah, I live in the Surrey
Yeah.
Hills. Yeah, so I live a sort
Okay.
of. I do a lot of cycling.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So, but the head of the council piped up safety, right? And that, in her world,
No,
safety is a disaster.
no,
No,
absolutely. It's
safety is the
a
time when the police will not, for the sake of equity, diversity, inclusion, they will not talk about raping white girls, right?
Yeah, that's right. Is
And they
that
won't
happening
get
in
to the
Surrey
bottom of
as
that.
well?
Sorry?
Ah, is it happening where you are as well?
Oh yeah,
Dead
totally.
sad.
Yeah, yeah, totally disastrous. It's been going on for 20 years. Although there is a turning point. I mean, don't dwell on that, but it's just an example of the level of corruption that we're
Yeah.
facing.
See, what I would say about that sort of safety is that so any of these things that are too existentially horrifying for people to grapple with, and that's
Yeah.
everything, right? That's the
Yes. Yeah.
entire world at the moment.
Yeah.
People just cannot fathom the extent of the corruption, the extent of the horrors, is we have to allow psychological safety for people to even look into the belly of the beast. That's what I mean. So, for example, with the whole COVID and the jabs and all this stuff going on, what I get really frustrated with and have for the last few years is that the majority of whatever you want to call them, red pilled, truth is freedom, whatever, they're all trying to shame the doctors into submission. They're all saying to them, Nuremberg 2, blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong, I was saying that at the start when they first really
Yeah.
came after me. But when you come at people from that place of vilification and anger,
Yeah.
you're never going to shame or frighten people into
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
And waking up, as it were.
Yeah.
It's only from a place of safety, and that safety has to be, what I mean by that is a psychological awareness. So even these, and you know, I really struggle with this, especially as a woman, and all the rape and the pedophilia and the rape of the children. You know, you struggle, we all struggle with it, right?
Yeah.
But we have to look into the belly of the beast, and we have to look, what are the circumstances that has allowed these young men, who are just young men, they're not evil. I don't believe in evil people, right? I believe in situations and circumstances that have allowed this to arise as like an emergent property, right, of a complex system. So we have to be safe enough to kind of man up, as it were. And all right, let's look at this as though, as objectively as though we're anthropologists. How has this come to be? And that takes safety.
So,
that's what I mean.
on that point, I've got an interesting angle on that, which is called the winning thinking program. Okay, so what my winning thinking program is, and the reason why the reason why I'm acutely aware, in fact, it's a real disadvantage to understand the psychology of this, because you feel like you're the only person with the glasses on that can see what's going on, which is pretty awful situation. So the first thing I'd say is that the nature of this is escalating dialogue and escalating actions. Okay, and that I believe is diabolical in its essence. Okay, but how does that happen? Okay, it's fueled by language. So if you look at the development of the World Economic Forum, okay, they started off by, when you and I were younger, talk about climate, global warming, and then it's got to global boiling.
Were you caught up in that? Huh?
But this is all about crap language.
It is language. It's all language. It's NLP. The whole thing is based on the language.
A quick insight to winning thinking is that you come up with a mantra like that, and there are far worse mantras, and the psychology, and then people have to follow suit. And that, you know, if governments are fearful, then they've got an ideal way out, right? Because the WEF is a great way to advocate responsibility and also indemnify you, which is legal indemnity, which is absurd. But of course, coming back to what we were saying before in terms of the blind spot, all this stuff isn't being fixed. So we're now introducing, in my analysis, I've done some analysis on this as an engineer and just trying to, and also as a psychologist. So, well, in my own way of understanding the psychology, the thinking that's driving this, I've checked the psychology and the reality, right? Because it's the psychology that drives the bloody thing, and it's the reality that's emerging, and you can see the link between the two. And I look for commonality, right, between the reality and the psychology, and actually are the actions aligned with the psychology. So, and actually, because it's so awful, I try and disassociate myself from look at this dispassionately, because what's being said is so horrific, right?
Yes.
But if you can put that in a box, right, and say that is horrific, but if you understand the language, you can understand the drivers. So what I do with my winning thinking program, I'm not particularly trying to sell it, but I'm just trying to provoke the discussion, is I point out to people, right, how do people get corrupted, right? Because I have worked with people who have behaved unbelievably badly in business because they became corrupted because of what happened in the last few months of a business's existence, where the managing director corrupts the finance director. The finance director starts breaking the law, and all of a sudden you've got money going everywhere where it shouldn't do, and all of a sudden Tom turns up. So, right, we're going to do about this then, right? And actually, so it's similar but different. And so the answer to that is to understand the dialogue. So I listen to the dialogue. I give people love and grace, and I can put it back together. And also I can cope with it myself, because unless I give people grace, unless I say to you, Ros, you know, and I actually have an amnesty as well. I say, look, you know, Ros, the only mistake you can make is not to tell me something. I don't like surprises, right? So I give you all the grace in the world, but for goodness sake, get everything out on the table.
100%.
And then I do something bizarre. I give people, normally people who've been part of the problem, the responsibility, and the opportunity to put the thing back together. And love, that's where the love comes in. You give them an opportunity. They've never had that, and you could get the thing back on track. And the very
that's exactly what we're doing. Totally talking from the same spot. That's
brilliant, lovely. And actually, the first part of the winning thinking program, right? And this is it's sort of biblical, but it's not really. It's checked. Everything I do is checked biblically, but just to check my own bloody thinking. But the first part of because if you talk about someone's purpose, right, your purpose, right, is probably of no interest to me whatsoever. And
I don't know what my
so,
purpose is.
and actually, how sound is that purpose? It might be a whole list of material things, like your kids are going to play tiddlywinks or some other list of things, all of which, or you may have financial aspirations, all of which tragically can be taken away from you.
Yeah.
You may have, and if you live in Israel and you've got bombs dropping on you, for sure that
Yeah.
purpose is not robust. So what I encourage people to do in a loving type of environment is to get people's heads in the right place,
Mm.
and teams. I get people to give them the opportunity to take a different perspective, right?
Mm.
So to just consider that's a load of rubbish for a moment, and actually,
Mm.
take the perspective of what would happen if I put you, Ros, first, and you put me first, right?
That's it.
What
That's
would
it.
happen in that instance, and then what? But more
Yeah.
than that, right? More than that, I tell you, what's the action you're going to take now, right?
Yeah.
But this is not
Yeah.
rehearsal. So I go around the
Mm.
team of, let's say, exec team of 8 people,
Mm.
and they will
Mm.
all, and it's like a flower coming out, Ros, right? All
Mm.
of a sudden I realize, I can see, the world's, if I'm the boss, the world's not on my shoulders. Ros trying to help me. And it's like a flower coming out. And also you learn what really matters, because these are things which really matter to people. And
Mm.
most of the dialogue that takes place in businesses is just boring rubbish, really.
Bollocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
It
you
is.
talked about your experience at Accenture, and particularly for
Mm.
engineers, and also I think they've got real ethical situations. I mean, people in
Yes.
Google just bloody
Yeah.
unwilling to do what they're asked to be done. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's all of
Yet
that.
they
So
do it.
sorry, was that?
Yet yet they do it. The power of the group is extraordinarily strong,
Oh, I know,
right? And
and that's again, I talk about that in my book, because if in that group, somebody, I put this my process to one side in a normal board meeting. If someone
mm,
says climate emergency is a real problem, we need to do something about it, then everyone goes around the table, and everyone else sort of nods like dogs. This is
yeah,
psychologically
totally.
what people do, and
Yeah.
very few people ever challenge the facts. But if the question is, if you or I at the end of that queue of people being asked, well, what do you think? And Ros, you say, actually, no, I think it's absolute nonsense. You need a lot of
Mm.
courage to do that, Ros, and you need to know what you're talking about.
See, even the courage piece is an interesting one. I mean, keep going, but let's come back to the courage piece because the courage, it's yeah, a
Let's
very
give me
interesting.
your view of courage. I've got a view of courage. I call it.
Look, I don't have, firm views on any of this. I'm agnostic to everything. I just have my experience and I know what's happened to me. But the reason I bring it up is because I get people all the time saying to me, "Oh my God, you're so brave, Roz, you did all this stuff." And I don't even know what, happened to me or whatnot. But I basically spoke up and got burnt at the stake. And,
Yeah,
you know, my family, I mean, I was chucked out of my profession and
right.
mocked and shamed. They subjected me to a psychiatric assessment and said I was nuts. They threatened
No,
me with jail. Yeah, right. My
wow,
my family, I have 3 brothers. I come from a very, very masculine background. My dad
right,
was an engineer. My brothers are all very high IQ, sort of system thinkers.
right.
Yet we're still very much in the group. Like, I was a shame on the family and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
But for
really?
me, the
Wow.
courage, the courage, as though it's some sort of inbuilt, genetic or spiritually driven trait. It wasn't for me. I said I was terrified speaking out, Tom. I
Yeah,
didn't want to speak out. I sat
no,
and waited for a year and a half, waiting for professors and all these people much smarter than me to speak out. But in the end,
yeah,
same as you said about your daughters, as a parent, I couldn't not.
no.
I could not. It's,
Good
I've
for
heard
you.
other people say about this is a hill that they'll die on. And I say the same thing. And I
I agree.
don't want to sound dramatic with that, but there's nothing more important. And we have to, for the sake of our children, for the sake of
I
everyone,
know. Well, I'll tell you
speak
something.
the truth.
Jesus is definitely working your life. That's the good news.
Well,
Yeah,
there's so much. This is the thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti the Bible. I mean, there's so many brilliant things in the Bible, the Bible. But the core pieces for me are, let he who be without sin cast the first stone, right? There's all these people on their
yeah,
bloody high horses.
yeah.
I'm not on my high horse. I've made
No,
so many mistakes. I've
no.
said things in this that I regret and I wish I hadn't done. Um, what are the other ones? Oh, I can't even think of them now. It's late
Yeah,
and
no,
I'm
totally.
tired.
Well, Jesus,
But
Jesus
there's
is the
so
source of
many.
love. But anyway,
And Jesus, this is the other thing with Jesus, is he turned around and he said, don't believe me, you've got to go out and do your own thing.
yeah, totally.
Right. So
He
there's
always
too
said
many
go
people
out.
in
Yeah.
my thing that are following Jesus blindly. Oh, I've got to do what the
Oh
church
no,
says. It's like, no, no, no.
no, I totally agree. I mean, I think my take on courage, right, is the big question. I think for people like you and I is why do we care, right?
Yes, that's what I wanted
Um,
to ask you. Why do you think?
why do I care?
What do you think it's about? What makes us different, do you
Well,
think?
I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for you.
Mm,
But why
mm,
do I care? I care because um, I have had an interesting paper round, and I am passionate about creating workplaces that people want to work for, right?
okay.
And the one thing that is like my guiding light is people who haven't had opportunities and just been completely trashed in a company
Yeah,
turnaround because and the wrong people suffer, right?
yeah.
And the right and the well, so the wrong people suffer and the wrong people thrive. Um, and this is exactly what we've got now. So that's my expertise. So I identify those people who care. I give them opportunities. I identify those liars, frankly, who
Mm,
say all the right things, the Accenture type people,
mm, mm,
frankly, because I've
mm.
worked with
Yeah,
them just
yeah, yeah,
outrageous. Um,
yeah.
and but so the first question, so that's why I care. I think as well. I think as well, I've got a lightning rod of um, faith through me. Okay, so I have no I have and that because I think we need a compass, right? And there are some things I'm not willing to tolerate. Okay,
Mm,
and that is definitely not me. It's coming from somewhere else, and that's definitely coming
mm,
from Jesus. I know that for a fact. But you were talking earlier. There's some things you do want to say and some things you don't want to say, and I don't want you to say anything you're uncomfortable to say. But
mm,
the
mm,
consequences of not saying um, what is aligned with your beliefs psychologically, from my experience, are hugely damaging, particularly in this situation. And I'll just tell you because this is why I think what what develops courage, right,
mm,
and grit is
mm,
your ability to understand what drives you and then take action which is aligned with it. Okay.
mm, mm.
And if you don't do that, right, you
Yeah.
become evil. Frankly, because I mean Jordan Peterson talks about this. How does someone become a mass killer? And I've seen it in a company
Mm,
turnaround situation. How does a
mm,
good finance director become completely corrupt, sending
mm,
money left, right, and centre? It's
mm,
because
mm,
it started off um, when there was no cash in the business, and he thought, well, I'll just send this invoice, just before we've shipped the goods because I need
mm,
the money. And
mm.
it does that. And if you run a small business, you can take cash. I'm meticulous about always putting the cash with the bank, right? Because
Yeah.
I know that I am corruptible, right?
Mm.
But
That's
if you take
huge.
those
Yeah.
little steps, and
Yeah.
so, but I come from a family of very, very strong people. I mean, um, my grandmother, who was knee high to a grasshopper in her 80s, used to just fearless woman. I mean, just
Mm.
so there's
So is
something,
mine, actually. Yeah.
yeah. So I look back at my childhood and the things I was brought up to do, and
Mm,
we used to fight like hell in the family, and it was, but we'd always have grace, and love for each other. We'd had, and so I came, and I've never searched out an easy life. I've always put
mm,
myself put my head in the lion's mouth every time. Um,
mm.
so
Same.
I pride myself. I've never done the same day's work twice.
Mm,
So so there's a few things that sort of make me what I am, but it's that ability to understand yourself, and you only
mm.
understand that. I mean, part of that is actually when I left
It's so
university,
important
and,
to
and so
understand yourself.
physically as well. I climbed the Alps.
Important.
Sport is very important. I think. I mean, I pushed myself to the limit. I mean, I was a
Mm,
seriously competitive cyclist when I'm still pretty good now. I run a cycling business now, oddly enough. But I still, I learned more about myself climbing the Alps with a bike you couldn't lift, touring bike you couldn't lift. I was doing about 5,000 meters climbing a day and I'd never really done much cycling. I learned more about myself and stepping out. So I just did that. I learned about myself, and I've always
yourself. Yeah.
put myself in that
Yeah.
that place. So and you discover yourself. And when I started my own business, I was only representing myself. I threw away all that corporate bullshit. And so I'd represent myself. So coming back to your point, am I cancelled? Absolutely. But I don't notice because I'm just run my own business.
Yeah, same. Look, the piece I would say, when you say if you don't, there's pieces, if you're holding them back,
yeah,
then you're doing yourself an injustice and going to head to evil. Let me just give my position on that. The reason there's things, and I'm very happy to talk to you about these, but there's some things I won't say publicly. And the reason I won't say them publicly is because I understand the psychological manipulation that has happened to people. And if you come in, you know, these people are so defended psychologically against so many pieces. If you come in and start screaming genocide and corruption and all these pieces, that. Yeah, right. So that's what I'm saying I avoid, but it's not because I'm not willing to put myself out there. It's because I know strategically it doesn't work.
But just talk about that word genocide. Let's just talk about the word genocide for a minute. What type of word is that?
It's not a word I use, but it's a word that a lot.
What type of word? What type of word is it?
How do you, in what sense?
Well, I'll just give you, sorry, I didn't want to be a smart ass. I'm trying to catch you out, but in the Winning Thinking program, right, I teach people what type of word that is, okay?
Okay.
Now, genocide is a generalization, okay? So to say that XYZ is genocidal, of course it's not true, because not everybody, you know, but it's a very convenient label. And the interesting thing about it's also a negative generalization. Do you know what the unique thing about a negative generalization is? Do you know what?
Well, it's existentially terrifying and people instantly defend against it.
No, it's false. This is a truism, a truth, right? But challenge your thinking on this. Maybe just think about this when you go away.
No, I'm open to everything.
But all negative generalizations are false, right? So if I say any negative generalization that
vaccines are dangerous, COVID vaccines are dangerous,
it's a negative generalization.
Exactly.
But you can use it to advantage. You can use it to advantage because, and this is what I don't do, because it's highly inflammatory. Because if somebody, right, has been indoctrinated and are not thinking, they are driven by the hippocampus, and they're not. No, there's nothing. All they're just responding, and they're not filtering. They're not thinking. They're just doing. And this is what I mean. Part of my book, I realized that, the vaccine is destroying people's ability to think because of the way that the hippocampus neurons are not being regenerated. So what's happening is you're effectively overwriting your system 2 brain when it gets overloaded, and you get indoctrinated directly, as well as the lockdown measures, isolating you and all the rest of it. It's a psychological, and I discovered in 2017, the Chinese discovered this, and that's the only benefit. Well, it's the only feature. I'm going to say benefit, it's an awful thing to say, but it's the only feature of the COVID vaccine that is known to be true that I've discovered, is that it's psychologically destructive. So if you just put yourself, again, this is what I mean by aligning the facts with the psychology. If you have a very indigestible, unpleasant plan to drive forwards, which I never have, I just won't do things that are wrong in my view. I'll try, and if I don't, I'll stop very quickly. But if you're Klaus Schwab with a very hideous plan, which is unbelievably divisive, and they deploy all of the worst possible deploys, and he's actually called it COVID, the Great Reset. He talks about this blatantly, and this is all part of the strategy to mess people up, because if this bit like the dialogue gets worse and worse and worse, but this is it being enacted as well. So
they've done a good job. Like, you've got to give it to them. They've done a very, very good job.
Very sophisticated. So my book actually breaks this whole bloody thing down. It actually talks about, it's actually written in reverse, oddly enough. So I've effectively defined where is this going, right? I've then I've added another chapter which is around COVID and the damage that's been done from the lockdown and the measures and the COVID vaccine to the best of my ability, and also the best scientific analysis I can come across from people who haven't been bought. And the other weird thing, mass psychosis, is that the people who are discredited are right, which is an absolute tragedy. So we're genuinely in the era of the gulags and Solzhenitsyn, genuinely, right?
Totally.
And the only way that those sorts of situations have ever been unwound is by strong people like you and I and others, of which I can probably count 15, 20 around the world, who actually got the courage to speak out. And that's what Solzhenitsyn did.
Yeah, there's a lot to have this courage to speak out. The problem is that the vast majority that's speaking out still want to be on the white horse.
What do you mean the white horse? What do you mean?
They want to be the one that saves the day, right? They still come in from a place of ego.
Well, I agree. And I come at this from a point
really big problem.
I come at this from the point of two things. Checking my own thinking, right? So I'm speaking to you because I love to check my own thinking, and but also relationships and coalescing around an issue, because, and I think what's happening at the moment in speaking out, new relationships have been developed, like you and I meeting. The question is, how can we, if there's a fit, how can we do something useful? Because the big problem I think we're facing with here, which really concerns me, is the skill set. So I talked to you a bit about the type of word that genocide is. So people are not aware. If you take Accenture, they're the worst people. The big four consultancies are not aware of their own dialogue. They use words like that, which are very powerful, very emotive. EDI is very powerful, very emotive, intentionally, exactly the same thing. And they drive these big problems, and people are not aware of this. It's not that it's right or wrong. It's just saying, hold on a minute, that word is flawed. Do not use that word. What do you mean? It's a very convenient label. If you're a nutty Islamist of some variety, it's a very convenient label to reverse the psychology and inflame the situation. And then if you can't, and what that does, you get ideology versus ideology, and
the whole way.
And then you've got a war.
Us and them. Every point. Shall I tell you what I'm doing? I have to go fairly soon. I'd love to keep talking though. I've got my daughter out there and we were playing a game, and I said, I just want to come and talk to you. But let's talk again. So I don't even know how you found me. How did you find me? Which bit, so I don't repeat myself?
I didn't remember.
Okay.
I'd have to look back. I'm not sure.
No, that's okay. So basically the whole sort of obedience thing, the Lighthouse Declaration, which is something that I started with a couple of doctors a couple of years ago. The whole point of that is to show other medical professionals, and they are really important in this, far more than psychologists, because existentially doctors hold the same sort of life and death, right? Protective stance as parents, as governments, etc. And of course, the narrative has been for several years that it's only a few fringe nutter anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorists, right? So that's all about just getting more and more doctors, health professionals around the world who are all calm, who are all intelligent, and and showing that sort of strength. But the other piece that I've been working on for the last couple of years, when I've had a chance, is actually kind of what you were, I don't know if you were alluding to it before, but it's almost the reverse engineering of what's gone on, right? Because all of this is done psychologically. So it's been working with all these different, not just psychologists, but people from different philosophies, whether they're psychoanalysts, whether they're behavioral scientists, to really look at what is it that they've done and reverse engineer it. But for me, the biggest piece here, and the way I always used to work with the families that I worked with, is teaching them just basic Psych 101, right? Because when people understand basic Psych 101, you have the recipe of yourself, and it takes you out of the subjectivity into the objectivity. I don't know if you ever played many computer games, right? I used to play a lot of computer games, and it's basically, the first person shooter games, right? So it's taking you out of that into the objective view. So what we were talking about right at the start, going from the subjective, oh my God, this is all happening to me, to almost being an anthropologist. Isn't this interesting? This is what's happening. So when you have that understanding of yourself, but then from that, then teaching people what's been going on in those nudge units, what's been going on in those behavioral units, but not from, again, this place of us versus them, because the biggest problem that you just sort of mentioned, that we have planet-wide, whether it's climate, whether it's Israel, whether it's God knows what, it's like Man United versus Arsenal. It's all bullshit, right? None of that exists. The vast majority of people are good, loving humans. It's just these, whatever you want to call them, nutters at the top. I don't know. I don't even get into who they are or why.
I would
right?
challenge that logic, if I may, a little bit.
No. That's what we used to be able to do.
In a
right?
nutshell, I don't think this is a rational problem. Okay,
it's not.
This is so therefore, you don't treat a rational problem with a irrational problem with a rational solution, because it just doesn't work. And actually, the disturbing thing is that people think they're doing the right thing, right?
Yeah, they do.
So
totally.
And this is indoctrination. So my concern is, I spoke to you a bit about this, is that my Winning Thinking program actually makes this crystal clear, right? So use the word genocide, right? And I can see exactly why you don't want to use that word, but it's so important, regardless of who uses that word, they need to understand what type of word that is and why not to use that word and what's the alternative. And that's so there's a skill set. The other thing I'd say as well is that I don't think, I mean, you mentioned the difficulty you've had with your family or whatever, well, whoever our group is, our group around us, right? We've got to be able to create robust enough relationships to have difficult conversations to get out of this mess. My concern is that there are too many broken relationships, and there's no way of creating safety to
not in our existing relationships. No, I think the last people you should be trying to sort this out with is your family and your existing relationships.
No, but what I mean, so that's not good. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but whoever those people are around you, we've got to develop the relationships, because with people around us, as well as in, fixing the bigger problem, because that's actually and that means having, my view is, if we've got a good relationship, Ros, business relationship, working relationship, friendship, do you know what the definition of friendship is? It's a biblical word. It means I can say anything to you, Ros. Right? I can say anything to you. Which means, and that, of course, that requires you and I to have a good relationship or friendship.
I'd love to hold, that's the safety I'm talking about.
My concern is that I think when I have, and I intentionally do this to figure out what's going on, to ascertain, I think most people, well, 22% of Germans haven't been vaccinated. I think, sadly, there's a huge amount of people who are completely indoctrinated. And I can address that actually with the Winning Thinking program, which sounds bloody pretentious thing to say, but genuinely I do. Because in a company turnaround, things become very extreme, which are very similar to this current situation. And you can unwind that, and you can lay everything bare. And I'll use the word safe in my own terminology, in a non-threatening, very human way, but with a focus on re-establishing relationships and re-establishing ways of communicating and having difficult discussions, frankly. And the outcome of it is, weirdly enough, it's a feeling of brokenness.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's a feeling of reliance. It's a feeling of, actually, I need you, Ros, and you need me if we're working together. And this is how we can work together.
That's exactly it. And like you said early on, you check in on yourself frequently. So do I, all the time. And that's the thing, but being able to look into yourself and see your own brokenness. And I think that's the first step. We have to, instead of trying to fix other people, we all need to go in and look at our own.
We need other people to tell us where we're broken as well.
Right? Yeah. And then people seeing that's what becomes safe, not us trying to say, you need this and we need to have these conversations.
I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you, just give me an example of this. One of the programs I ran with a very, very powerful woman, really very clever. Part 6 of the Winning Thinking program, I turned it around because she was very sort of dismissive one-to-one with me in terms of the way she saw the rest of the team. And I turned it around. I said, look, we got to this certain stage, whoever it was, remained nameless. And I said, look, I'm going to ask each one of the team members to tell them, ask them, what can they do to help you, so-and-so, right? And so she had this issue. I said, look, okay, stop. I'm going to go around the table. Each one of them are going to I hijacked the process a bit. I don't normally do that. And then was like a flower coming out. All of a sudden, you could have that two-way communication. Now,
Yeah.
and the trust was there, but that was only by that stage 6. That's about 4 hours into this, right? Where she got her head in the right place to actually be able to listen. I think these guys
Yeah.
are on my side.
Yes.
My concern with this, Ross, is from what I understand about the psychology, I don't think we're going to get out of this mess. I don't. I do not
You
think we're going
don't
to get.
think we're going to get out of this mess?
No,
Tell you,
not
I
unless we
do.
not unless we upskill. No, I'm
No, we
90.
have to upskill. That's exactly it. We have to upskill.
So
That's what I see as the critical piece
good.
for
Yeah. So
humanity.
maybe we'll talk about that in a bit more detail, how to upskill.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
show you mine and you can show me yours, to use that
Yeah, yeah,
school girl
yeah, yeah.
expression.
Yeah, 100%. Let's
Yeah.
do that. No,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Great, Ross.
Okay,
Lovely
cool.
to
It
speak
was
to you.
really lovely to meet you.
Yeah,
I'm
likewise. Yeah.
glad, 'cause I had a good intuition when I saw your bits. It's like, yep, spot
Yeah,
on, lovely.
perfect. Well, you're welcome
Who's
to.
the man behind you, by the way? I love that photograph.
That's one
Is
of
that your
my
grandfather, great
that guy.
grandfather?
That guy is one of my sort of ballsy relatives. He's one of my grandfathers who he used to drive a Rolls Royce around the desert, and remember
Really?
those oil pumps in the Middle East were going up and
Oh,
down wooden things.
seen them.
He was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bloke with his Rolls Royce Brit, doing whatever he was doing. So he was an interest. So that's a sort of, I come from an industrial type background. Who all of my grandfathers were sort of general managers in British manufacturing, so they didn't take any prisoners.
Okay.
So that's the sort of
Interesting, yeah.
that's it. But let's talk about people development next time, and drop me a note
Yeah,
in
look,
terms of.
that's my whole piece.
Let's
That's it. It's
come back
how
to me
we
with a
help
time next
ourselves.
week, Ros. I sent you a link. Give me a time next week when it's convenient. No rush. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I will. It's a really tricky time in the UK with the UK difference at the moment. So because I'm a morning person generally, but
Yeah.
you are as well, yeah?
I work all the bloody time, but unless I'm cycling.
Okay.
I'm either cycling or I'm walking or drinking coffee. There's 3 things. That's all I do.
Oh, what you do? What
Yeah.
about your daughters? How old are they?
They come cycling with me. I'm going to
Oh, that's great.
Rosie's come to the Alps with me in the next couple of weeks.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the time. So what are you at the moment? You're sort of lunchtime.
Yeah, so I don't care what time of day. It's 1 o'clock at the moment here.
So for me, yeah, I prefer it just depends. I prefer, yeah, it's too late at the moment. I prefer sort of 8 a.m. starts, but it's 11 at night at the moment. When the clocks were the other way, it was fine, but it's just
give
too
me a
late.
time, I'll be there. It's fine. We'll have a touch. I don't care.
Okay,
Happy to
awesome.
let me know.
All right. So good
Nice
to
one.
chat.
See you,
All
Ross.
right, take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.